It's cute. Okay. Okay. Let's put it aside. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Demilade Fayemiwo. Welcome to Let's Have Tea. And today you can tell I'm doing something different because I'm standing in the kitchen, but I am not about to cook a meal. Even though I would say I make really badass meals. I am here to talk to you about parts. I know, very mundane and very random, but trust me, I'm connecting this to something. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who have been watching my videos. And I just want to say the reason I created Let's Have Tea was not necessarily to motivate anybody. It's not supposed to be a motivational channel. So even though the past few videos I've done have really been about like the things I did, the decisions I made, my intention is to sort of give people the knowledge so that they can go on and live their best lives. It's not me trying to become a motivational speaker. So that out of the way, I'll tell you why these sports are so important. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. It was the last day of my master's degree in environmental engineering. I was running a model and I had an appointment at the gynae. And when I went to the gynae, he basically said, girl, you've got a condition called endometriosis. Before then, I had never, ever heard about this condition. For me, it just sounded random. I remember going home and Googling it and thinking, what is that? And he also said, you need to have surgery, otherwise you're in trouble because it's all over and we need to take it out. So obviously I was in a panic. I had a master's degree thesis to complete and so many other things to do. And it was just such a confusing time. I was living by myself. No, I had a flatmate, but like, it was also just like, I don't want to burden anybody with this. And there was just so much drama going on around me at that time. So I had the surgery, and the way it was explained to me in terms of what endometriosis is if you have a woman of childbearing age, every month, there are endometrial cells that will grow to line her uterus. For those who don't know, the uterus also means the womb. They will line her uterus and they will wait for her to make a baby. She doesn't make a baby, they get really mad and they tear down the entire wall, and that's how she bleeds, and that's what we call a period. Now, in women who have endometriosis, the same type of cells will grow outside of the womb in other parts of the body. So during the normal menstrual cycle, when the body is expelling the blood, those cells are also producing their own kind of bleeding. And the problem is there is no way for that bleeding to escape because it's stuck in other parts of the body. So it can be stuck inside the ovaries, it can be stuck on the bladder. Sometimes it is also on the gut. Endometriosis can spread to people's lungs, it can spread to the diaphragm. Endometriosis can basically go everywhere and anywhere. So it's a very, very dangerous condition. And when it does that, it also causes a lot of pain. Before I was diagnosed, I would have periods that would last for 7 days, and out of those 7 days, 5 days would be very heavy. And when I mean heavy, I mean super heavy, where I couldn't even walk, and I would go through about 6 to 7 pads in a day, sometimes 10 pads in a day, because it was just heavy flow. I would not be able to walk. I would have amnesia sometimes, which was like selective amnesia, where I wouldn't remember things like my date of birth, or I wouldn't remember my ATM pin card, my ATM pin code rather. So it was very, very hectic to deal with. So when I was diagnosed and I had surgery, I sort of got my life back, but not fully. And I wrote a book about that because that was such a trying period for me. If you want to read the book, you can. Some of the ideas I shared in the book are still what I believe today. And I think in a way, maybe some of them have even matured within me, and I hope to do videos about that. But that's not the point of this video today. I want to tell you about why these pots are so important to me. These are cool pots. I can't wait to use them. So recently, I started to notice that I was showing symptoms of endometriosis again, but in a very different way. Like, I had a moment last year where it seemed as though something gripped my intestines and started to squeeze them together. And I thought, what on earth is this? I started to have more symptoms that you would relate with irritable bowel syndrome, which is IBS. And that was really weird for me because I had never had gut issues before. I'm the kind of person who can eat almost anything and be fine. Like, I eat gluten. I'm not a dairy type of girl. I don't really like it, but if I eat it, nothing goes wrong. But these days, like, I'd have something and something would go wrong. And it was just a really, really weird time. So I decided to go back to the doctor. And if you want to read about me ranting about why healthcare is so bad with regards to endometriosis, check it out on Medium. Anyway, went to the doctor and it was basically, yep, it's back and it is raging. So I started to reflect on my lifestyle. Now, during my PhD, I did not work on any endocrine disruptors. I was working on carcinogens specifically and how to remove them from drinking water, especially if they are organic pollutants. And that probably just sounds like jargon. The point is I was working on water treatment, but focusing on compounds that can cause cancer. When I did my postdoc, which was like a 6-month stint that I did, I wrote a paper on endocrine disruptors. And at that time, when I wrote the paper, I think my focus was really on, I think my focus was really on how do endocrine disruptors in plastic affect us and how can governments regulate them so that they can ensure the health of their populations and things like that. So it was more like a policy focused paper and how it would relate to government action and how government action relates to productivity within the population. So it had nothing to do with the scientific side of it. But when I heard that these symptoms were back, I decided to go and do some research. And I realized that, first of all, I've been using a lot of non-stick pots. And non-stick pots, if you're not aware, have compounds in them that are called PFAS or PFOS. I'll put the full names on the screen so you can see. But PFAS and PFOS, like I will be calling them, are very common compounds that you can sometimes find like in your shampoos, in anything that is non-stick. Well, not anything, but a lot of non-stick stuff, something that's just plainly non-stick. And you can also find it in like your raincoats and things that are like water repellent and all of that. So PFAS and PFOS are quite common. They're really everywhere. So I decided to do some digging because, listen, once a researcher, always a researcher. Went on Google Scholar, put on my scholar hat, and I said, listen, I'm going to do a bit of a literature review here. And what I found was very interesting. What has been found in literature reported by researchers is that PFAS and PFOS do have an association with endometriosis, but there are 2 rules that you need to understand, or rather, is it one? It is one rule that you need to understand when you are reading a scientific paper like that. Even if something is correlated to the other, it doesn't mean it causes the other. In other words, say for example, every time you look out your window, you see your neighbor staring up at your apartment from the garden, which is very creepy. But let's say that happens. That is a correlation. Every single time you open your window, your neighbor is standing right there and is looking up at your apartment weirdly, not lovingly. That's weird. It's creepy. Don't ever do that. That is a correlation because it happens every time or almost every time. It doesn't mean that you are causing your neighbor to stand outside there and look up at your window. It just means every time you do it, he's right there. Whatever is causing him to stand there might be a whole different thing. So with regards to PFAS and PFOS, they are correlated or associated, which is basically what we say when it's a weak correlation. They are associated with endometriosis, but it doesn't mean that they cause it, which makes a lot of sense because before non-stick pots became a thing, I sort of developed this condition about 10 years ago. But that is not the only risk factor that you have to deal with when it comes to endometriosis. With regards to endometriosis, you can also have diet and lifestyle playing an impact. Now, I try to follow a very healthy diet to the best of my ability. I work out 4 times a week and somehow I still have some crazy symptoms that pop up. So listen, this is not a golden rule. But what I have found in literature is that if you consume a lot of trans fatty acids, you are likely to have endometriosis, or it's likely to increase your risk of developing endometriosis. And where would you find these trans fatty acids? You would find them in commercial baked goods, which I found to be quite interesting. Frozen pizza, stick margarine. I have a list here that I'm just reading off from. Non-dairy coffee creamer might also be something that might increase your risk. Donuts, and also, interestingly, coconut oil. Now, coconut oil wasn't exactly stated as one of the compounds, but because, again, your girl's a researcher, I went and did some digging into like what are the everyday items that have trans fatty acids in them, or partially hydrogenated fatty acids, which is another kind of fatty acids associated with an increased risk of endometriosis, and coconut oil came up. So just telling you what I found in the literature, and I'm talking about published papers, published peer-reviewed papers, not things I just read on like a Google website, okay? The interesting thing I also found, which took me aback a bit, was that palm oil does not have any trans fat. So it's actually a healthier fat than coconut oil. And I'm not sure a lot of people know that, but if you don't, now you do. It's also known that working out can help reduce your symptoms, especially related to pain. And I should say that endometriosis is such a weird condition because sometimes the pain is not consistent. So for me, 10 years ago, the pain I used to have was quite different. The pain I started developing the last 1 year has been a completely different story. And it's pain that has even advanced to like different parts of my body and caused inflammation. And oh yes, I should tell you, endometriosis is an inflammatory condition. People who have endometriosis, at the time they are experiencing what we would call an endometriosis flare, they are in a state of chronic inflammation, not inflation, which, I mean, you know what, the inflation is also probably causing inflammation, because what is this cost of living crisis? Anywho, they're experiencing chronic inflammation, and so they might have symptoms of people who are ill with something else. So it might look as though they've got some type of other condition, like a bacterial infection or something, but it is just endometriosis going crazy. The last time I had a flare, I couldn't sleep for 48 hours and I couldn't eat, yet my stomach was swollen as though I was pregnant. I had to call an ambulance to take me to the hospital at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. They gave me a painkiller that helped me, knocked me out, put me to sleep. But for the most part, there was just this sense of something was wrong, like I had an infection of some sort. And when my blood tests came back, my white blood cells were super high, which suggested that my body was fighting some kind of inflammation, even though I did not consume anything that would have caused it. So just to let you know that it's an inflammatory condition, and your diet, your lifestyle can really impact that. So a lot of the videos that I see online are always like, if you don't want to have endometriosis, follow a vegan diet. If you follow a vegan diet, you're never going to develop the symptoms. That is not necessarily true. Proof right here. Following a vegan diet is not necessarily going to keep you from developing endometriosis or from it getting worse. I think endometriosis might be some autoimmune condition. There's a high chance it is that, and there's literature that suggests it is that. So a vegan diet is not necessarily going to help you if you already have it. But what it might do is maybe reduce your risk of inflammation. If you, for example, reduce your consumption of red meat, it doesn't mean you kick out red meat completely. That might help you, and that's not you following a vegan diet, by the way. That's just you eating less of something that might be inflammatory, if that makes sense. So eat less red meat, eat more fish, eat less dairy, eat more fermented dairy. So for example, I don't take milk because I don't know, I just never liked it as a child, but I do take kefir, which is more like a liquid yogurt made from milk, and it's fermented. So a lot of the components of the milk have been broken down by bacteria, and that bacteria is what typically lines the intestine. So it helps with good intestinal function. So that's always a good idea to take, maybe not dairy, but fermented dairy, lots of fermented products. The literature shows that if you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, you're likely to reduce the pain that's related with endometriosis. And I found that to be true. But I did find that when I was on a completely vegan diet, I did not have, for some reason, I had more pain. So I don't know how that worked out. Just saying that it doesn't work that way for everybody. So don't believe that if you follow a vegan diet, then all of a sudden you're going to be 100% okay. We all have different body compositions, and there might be something else influencing how you respond that might be different from how someone else would respond to that. Something else I did find that I think is very helpful is that endometriosis is also associated, again, remember that word, associated, which means weakly correlated with the reduced availability of certain vitamins. So vitamin C, D, and E in particular were identified in one of the studies that I read as key vitamins that are needed if you want to combat endometriosis. So if you are someone who's suffering and you're thinking, everything is fine, I'm eating healthy, maybe start taking some supplements. I take a vitamin D supplement every day. Unfortunately, I can't report if it's working because I've had to freeze my periods for some time because the pain I've been going through has been really crazy, and I can do a whole different video about that. And please, people, I just want to beg you, don't send me comments telling me to try yoga. I do yoga at least 3 times a week. It's not helping. It's not helping. There's something else going on, and I'm trying to figure it out. I've basically taken myself as a guinea pig in the absence of excellent healthcare, and I've been trying things to ensure that I am healthier and better. And so if I find anything that works, I'll definitely report it. But I'm just saying, don't tell people who have endometriosis to go do yoga. So yeah, lots of fruits, lots of vegetables are definitely helpful. Vitamin C, D, and E are helpful. I was talking to a colleague and she mentioned vitamin B12 as something that a doctor had mentioned to her as one of the possible vitamins that might be deficient in people who suffer from conditions like this. So I haven't tried it yet, but I'm planning to get it. It is also important that you take your omega-3 fats, and if possible, I take an omega-6 as well, which is evening primrose oil. But I mostly take it because I'm like, a girl wants to glow. I don't have any makeup on, but like I just want the glow. So that's my reason, but people say it does help as well. So there might be deficiencies of certain nutrients in the body, and there is no way to really tell what the problem is. If I'm being honest, my research mind right now is sort of like traveling and jumping around and thinking, perhaps it might be that for people who have endometriosis, because endometriosis is often linked to irritable bowel syndrome. And that is a whole different condition entirely, where the bowel is just really sensitive to certain items. It could be gluten, it could be lactose. For some people who have IBS, they've had to live on just rice for like 3 weeks, and then start adding little things in. Some people react to garlic. So it's just a whole host of things. And my assumption might be, if these vitamins are found to be deficient in people who are at high risk or who have endometriosis, it might be that the gut is affected and it is not absorbing these vitamins from their foods. So there might have to be a new way to approach that. Maybe I just gave someone some, like, their PhD thesis idea. Listen, girl, boy, if you want to do it, please go for it, because we need it. Endometriosis does not get enough attention from everybody, I think there's just a sense that because it only affects 200 million women across the world, there is no reason to concentrate so much effort on it. Or maybe people just feel like, well, it's this condition and we don't know what causes it, so we're just not going to bother. But it really changes people's lives. It changes your life. People who have endometriosis often have to make so many changes around their lives in order for them to function. And the reality that I keep seeing with women who have endo is that they are really strong women. And I know it might be like I'm praising myself, but this is not just about me. It's about all the women I've met out there who also have endo, yet they show up every day, they achieve things. And you would never ever guess that they're dealing with this invisible condition. They show up, they make it work, they put themselves out there, they excel at whatever it is that they do. So like, girls, you are amazing. Just wanted to say that. But also to use this video to sort of educate and share with people that it is important for you to know the things that are in your home that might be exposing you to certain conditions. For example, using plastic might expose you to some endocrine disruption. Using non-stick cookware might expose you to endocrine disruption. I know iron cast cookware is in vogue right now, and everyone's like, get some Le Creuset, which is what I wanted. But it didn't work out, which is fine. I'll get it sometime. But what you can go for, which might be a lot cheaper, is a ceramic coating. So someone who's done chemistry a lot, ceramics are non-reactive. They don't react with your food at all. The problem with PFAS and PFOS when they use them, I think PFAS is the one used in non-stick cookware, is that when you heat up your food, there's a chance of them leaching into your food and then you consuming them. And they go and they act like your hormones and disrupt whatever might be happening. Again, there is no proof that they are the causes of endometriosis, but they are associated with endometriosis. Most of the papers I read said that a higher exposure to PFAS increased the risk of endometriosis presence. So you can get something which is much cheaper. This is the Ninja set. Ninja did not pay me for this, so I'm not advertising for them, but I'm just telling you that it's there on the market. Google it somewhere, you might be able to find it. It's non-reactive. I've read a lot of reviews about it and people think it's great. And I got like this, which is awesome. So yeah, that's what I thought I would do. The set arrived today and I was just like, oh, what a fantastic time to tell everyone I've got endometriosis. But I've been telling everybody that for years. It's not a secret. It's something I live with. That said, there's one more thing I should mention, and that is adenomyosis. Now, endometriosis gets a lot of attention because a lot of people are talking about it. Like people are like, oh, I have endometriosis. I've got endometriosis. There is another condition called adenomyosis, which is just as painful and also really crazy. Adenomyosis is when the endometrial cells seem to grow into the uterine lining. So they grow into the lining of the womb. So in this case, they are not like cells that have attached themselves elsewhere, which can be removed by excision if you have a very good surgeon. I am yet to find one. So, just waiting around. But with adenomyosis, the cells have sort of incorporated themselves into the wall of the uterus. So the only way to get rid of the pain with adenomyosis is to remove the uterus. And that's a big decision for a lot of women. Are you either going to be in pain all the time, or are you going to remove your uterus and be faced with the possibility that you won't have kids? And I know not every woman wants kids. That's not even the case. But I think there is something to be said about the fact that your body makes that decision for you. When I was told I had endometriosis, I wasn't sure if I wanted kids. I was young. I was in my early 20s. I was doing my master's. I was almost graduating. Like I could see the finish line, and I was getting ready for my fantastic life, which didn't come until much later. But then to be told like, oh, this is a condition that causes infertility in women, and it made me have to face at that point in time, like, wait, are you telling me I might never have kids? Even though I hadn't thought about it at that time. So point is, it does have a psychological component to it. It is a physically debilitating condition, both endometriosis and adenomyosis. And the psychological component can never be explained to somebody else in a way that they will understand. So I think the best thing I can just say is that if you have any of these conditions, I hope that you have support. I hope that the people around you understand when you have a flare and they're there for you and they're able to show you how loved you are, because it is very isolating. It's pain that only you can feel. Nobody else can feel it. It's pain that's uncomfortable. Sometimes you don't have the downtime you need. You need to show up and still do things. And I've taught entire classes just completely peeled up, if I can put it that way, like basically just full of painkillers, and standing there and lecturing the whole class, and nobody knew that I was dying in pain. Well, I wasn't dying in pain. I was just sort of like zoned out. I was like a zombie. So point is, like, I really hope that you have all the love and the support that you need. And I hope you make some lifestyle changes. Get your vitamins or your vitamins, whichever way you pronounce them. Change your cookware. Please, I beg you, change your cookware as much as possible. Reduce your use of plastic. I use a glass kettle. I don't know if you can see it in the corner there. And one more thing. This is the last bit, I promise. This. Get a filter, okay? So you can either get one that you can put into your tap, okay, to filter your water out. That's absolutely fine. Or you can get a jug filter. Some of these filters are really good at removing PFAS and PFOS in water, because guess what? They are in drinking water. But the study I read about them did say that there is no way to confirm that they can, that they sort of associated with endometriosis. But again, they might be associated with other conditions. This was a study that was conducted only in Sweden. So there's no way to say if like it was a lower concentration in Sweden, it might be higher where you are. So just make sure that you are looking after yourself, making all the changes you need to, and also exercise. It doesn't have to be hectic. You don't need to lift weights. Doing some Pilates, going for a long walk, maybe doing a run. I do find that cardio exercises can help me when it's pain time. So yeah, do lots of those. Reduce your red meat consumption, reduce your trans fat consumption, so vegetable oils, partially hydrogenated oils like coconut oil, your fried foods and things, reduce those as much as you can. And yeah, have a good life. I wish you all the best. Goodbye.